episode 12 of Heritage Food Stories, why Aruba is one of the most diverse places in the Caribbean and Aruba's multicultural identity. We're diving deep into the history, the culture, the people of Aruba. Aruba is literally one of the most diverse and multicultural countries of the Caribbean. Hi, I'm your host, Chef Mireille, chef, food historian, and culinary storyteller with a lifelong passion for global cuisines and the stories behind the food we eat. Aruba, the largest island of the Dutch Caribbean, is more than sun-kissed beaches and the perfect vacation spot for any time of year located outside of the hurricane belt. It is more than Flamingo Beach, snorkeling, and one happy island. With a population of just about 109,000, more than 100 ethnicities call Aruba home. Aruba is one of the most culturally diverse islands of the Caribbean, having switched hands between several European colonizers from the Dutch to the Spanish. Beneath the tourism brochures lies a complex history shaped by indigenous peoples, European colonization, migration, and cultural exchange that created one of the most diverse societies in the Caribbean. Today, we are diving deep into what most people don't know about Aruba. Before we dive into today's topic, I'd really appreciate your support by liking and subscribing to the podcast. And don't forget to check out the links to recipes and resources in the show notes. Now let's get into it. Okay. I don't intend to be condescending, but the average American has a limited knowledge about the Caribbean and even less about the Dutch Caribbean. So what does it matter if you know little to nothing about a part of the world so far away? Well, it wouldn't if some Americans did not often make sweeping general comments about the Caribbean that are based on assumptions instead of facts. These comments can often be insulting and demoralizing. It wouldn't matter if the Caribbean was not seen as a monolith, but instead as a group of diverse peoples with each country having its own cultural identity, cuisine, and customs. Some Americans think the Caribbean includes Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and not much more. Some don't even realize that Dominican Republic and Haiti share the same island. Questions like, is St. Lucia located inside of Jamaica, really get on my last nerve. Forget about countries like Suriname and Guyana that are culturally Caribbean but geographically located in South America. Before you say that I am exaggerating, here's an anecdotal incident that occurred to me. I used to teach after-school culinary classes in a program that used culinary classes as a vehicle to teach kids about history, geography, and cultures around the world. And every week we would focus on a different country. While the fourth grade science teacher and I were cleaning up after class one day, she asked me how is it that I know so much about so many cultural cuisines, and I responded by telling her a bit about my diverse family background. When I mentioned that my mom was from Aruba, her response was, "Really? I didn't think people actually live there. I thought it was just a vacation island." Need I say more? Now, on March 18th, Arubans celebrate their Flag Day, commemorating the establishment of their national anthem and flag, often referred to as Aruba Day. The holiday commemorates the adoption of Aruba's national anthem, Aruba Mi Dushitera, and the national flag in 1976, a milestone in Aruba's movement toward greater autonomy within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The day is celebrated with music, cultural events, food, and national pride across the island. So in honor of Aruban Day, this week's podcast episode explores Aruba, the history that shaped its culture, the many languages spoken on the island, and the culinary traditions that reflect centuries of migration and cultural exchange. Let's start with a brief history of Aruba. The first inhabitants of Aruba were the archaic peoples, who arrived by canoe from the northern coast of South America thousands of years ago. They lived primarily as hunters, fishers, and gatherers along the island's coastline. Around 900 to 1000 AD, the Caquetío people, an Arawakan-speaking indigenous group from present-day Venezuela and Colombia, migrated to the island. They established permanent villages, practiced agriculture, and cultivated crops such as corn and cassava. Evidence of their presence can still be seen today in rock drawings and archaeological sites across the island. European colonization began in the early 16th century, when the Spanish arrived between 1502 and 1505. Because Aruba lacked the gold and silver the Spanish were searching for, they labeled Aruba, Curaçao, and Bonaire the Islas Inútiles, the useless islands. Unlike other Caribbean islands with rich, fertile soil where plantation agriculture could easily be established, Aruba's semi-arid climate and desert landscape made large-scale plantations difficult. As a result, the Spanish removed many of the indigenous people from Aruba and enslaved them on other islands, particularly Hispaniola, where they were forced to work in mines and plantations. In 1636, the Dutch seized control of Aruba during their war with Spain. Aside from brief periods of British occupation during the Napoleonic Wars, Aruba remained under Dutch rule for centuries. During the Dutch colonial period, Aruba became connected to wider Atlantic trade networks, which brought new populations and cultural influences to the island. Among these were Portuguese Sephardic Jews, descendants of Jews expelled from Spain and Portugal during the Inquisition. Many of these Jewish merchants had first settled in places like Amsterdam and Dutch Brazil before moving throughout the Caribbean, including the Dutch Caribbean islands. Their presence influenced trade, business networks, and aspects of Caribbean cuisine and culture. Another important influence came from the Cape Verde Islands, a Portuguese colony off the coast of West Africa. Cape Verdeans, many of whom spoke Portuguese-based Creole languages, were involved in early Atlantic trade networks and migration within the Caribbean. Their language and cultural traditions helped shape Papiamento, the Creole language spoken today in Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao. These migrations help explain why Portuguese vocabulary and linguistic structures appear in Papiamento today, even though Aruba was never a Portuguese colony. During the 19th century, Aruba's economy revolved around industries such as gold mining, aloe cultivation, and phosphate extraction, which brought workers and migrants from various parts of the Caribbean and Latin America. In the early 20th century, the island's economy transformed dramatically with the development of oil refineries that processed crude oil from nearby Venezuela. At one point during World War II, Aruba's refinery was one of the largest in the world and played a crucial role in supplying fuel to the Allied forces. Politically, Aruba was long governed as part of the Netherlands Antilles, which included Aruba, Bonaire, Curaçao, Saba, St. Eustatius, and the Dutch part of Sint Maarten. After decades of political activism and negotiations, Aruba achieved status aparte in 1986, becoming a constituent country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands with control over its internal affairs. Today, with a population of just about 109,000 people, Aruba is home to more than 100 nationalities, making it one of the most multicultural societies in the Caribbean. The people of the Dutch Caribbean are among the most linguistically diverse in the region. Most residents of the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao, speak at least 4 languages: Papiamento, Dutch, Spanish, English. Officially, Aruba recognizes Dutch and Papiamento as its official languages. Dutch is used in government and education, while Papiamento is the primary language spoken in everyday life. The word Papiamento comes from papia, to speak, and mento, People, literally meaning the language of the people. It is a Creole language that incorporates elements of Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, English, French, with limited contributions by West African languages and indigenous vocabulary. Due to Aruba's proximity to South America and long-standing trade connections, Spanish is widely spoken across the island. English is also common because of Aruba's tourism-driven economy. Just as Aruba's languages reflect its multicultural history, so does its music. Walking through the streets of Oranjestad or San Nicolas, you'll hear Caribbean genres such as salsa, bachata, zouk, compa, calypso, soca. One of the most important musical traditions of the Dutch Caribbean is tumba, a genre rooted in African rhythms from the Congo. But Aruba also helped create a modern musical style known as ritmo combina, meaning combined rhythm. Ritmo combina emerged in the 1980s and blends elements of merengue, bachata, zouk, soca, and tumba into a high-energy fusion genre. Songs are typically performed in papiamento, although Dutch, Spanish, and English phrases are often mixed in as well. The culinary landscape of Aruba reflects the diversity of its history and of the people who call Aruba home. These people encompass many ethnicities, from Indonesian and Chinese to the indigenous and descendants of formerly enslaved people. Some of the most popular foods include hearty soups and stews, like bonchi corastoba, which is a red bean stew, and keri keri, a shark stew. These come from the cuisine developed from enslaved populations. The popularity of funchi, a cornmeal-based porridge chilled into slices served alongside stews or fried as a snack, has ties to the indigenous people of Aruba. Due to Aruba's proximity to Venezuela and large Venezuelan and Colombian populations, Aruba has its own versions of arepas and hallaca. Hallaca consists of meat and cornmeal masa wrapped in banana leaves and boiled. It is part of the Dutch Caribbean Christmas tradition. Because of the people who came from Asia to the Dutch Caribbean as indentured servants, you will also find foods like samosa and curry, chow mein, satay, and nasi goreng. Since the island was colonized by the Dutch cheeses like Edam and Gouda, and the popularity of tuna fish in everything from pasteichi, which are our meat patties, to rice dishes, permeate the cuisine. Oliebollen, fruit-studded donuts, are a New Year's Day tradition in the same way it is in the Netherlands. While the rest of the Caribbean makes black cake for Christmas, in Aruba, it is bolo preto. This is a Dutch Caribbean variation of Portuguese Madeira cake, a rich fruit cake infused with port wine. Now, here are the must-try dishes, and the links to these recipes will be included in the show notes. Pasteichi, fried stuffed patties of the Dutch Caribbean. They can be stuffed with anything from cheese to chicken, but this tuna version that I've linked below is one of the most popular fillings. Queshiena, kind of like a gluten-free quiche made with cheese and meat. It is the national dish of both Aruba and Curaçao. Panbati, traditionally made from leftover fungi. These cornmeal pancakes are a perfect accompaniment to savory foods or enjoy with syrup for breakfast. One more thing. I am also currently running a series on the Dutch Caribbean on my TikTok. If you'd like to learn more about the Dutch Caribbean, please follow along on my TikTok page. It'll be linked in the show notes. I'll also be doing a live cook-off all day tomorrow, Aruba Day, on the foods of the Dutch Caribbean. On the menu is keri keri, the shark stew, funchi, queshiena, and more. Aruba may be famous for its beaches and year-round sunshine, but the true story of the island lies in its people, its history, and the cultural influences that shaped it over centuries. From the Caquetío Indigenous communities who first settled the island, to European colonization, African heritage, and waves of migration from Asia and Latin America, Aruba's identity reflects the complex history of the wider Caribbean. The languages spoken, the music played in the streets, and the foods prepared in Aruban kitchens all tell the story of a place where cultures merged to create something uniquely Aruban. Understanding Aruba beyond the tourist brochures helps us see the Caribbean for what it truly is, a region of incredible diversity, resilience, and cultural richness. When you look past the resorts and postcards, Aruba becomes more than just a vacation destination. It becomes a living example of the multicultural history that defines the Dutch Caribbean and the broader Caribbean world. Thanks for listening today. Remember, recipes are more than instructions. They're stories shaped by history, culture, and people. You'll find the full article, recipes, and resources in the show notes. I'm Chef Mireille, and I'll meet you in the next episode. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss a single video.